87% of real estate agents fail within their first 5 years. Let that land for a second. 87%. That means if you put 10 new agents into a room today, statistically, fewer than 2 of them will still be in the real estate 5 years from now. The other 8 will have quit, gone back to salary job, moved on, given up. Now here's the question I want you to sit with. What made the 13% different? Because I don't believe it was talent. I don't believe it was luck. And I don't believe it was the market. I believe it was a very specific set of decisions that the 13% made, that the 87% didn't. I know this because I'm in the 13%. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly what I did differently. The real decisions, the real habits, the real mindset shifts that I believe kept me in this industry when so many others left. My name is Scott Coomer. I'm a real estate team leader based in Arizona. Let's get into this. Before I tell you what the 13% do differently, I want to be honest about why most agents fail. Because the real reason is almost never what people think it is. Most people assume agents fail because they're bad at sales, or because the market is too competitive, or because they didn't have the right connections. Those things matter, but they're not the primary reason. In my experience, the primary reason most agents fail is much simpler than that. They treat real estate like a job instead of a business. They show up when they feel like it. They prospect when they're not busy. They follow up when they remember. They wait for motivation to drive their activity instead of building a structure that drives it for them. And then they hit the invisible runway, the period between when you start working and when the results actually show up. And without structure, without a schedule, without a system keeping them active, they slow down. They get discouraged and eventually they stop. The 87% didn't fail because real estate is too hard. They failed because they never built a structure that makes it sustainable. So let me tell you exactly what that structure looked like for me and what I believe it needs to look like for you. The first thing I did differently was building a real schedule and then protect it like it was the most important thing in my business, because it was. Before I got into real estate, I was coming from a salary job where I was working 60 hours a week. Someone else set my hours. Someone else told me when I had to be there and what to do when I arrived. And as exhausting as that was, it produced results because the structure was built in. When I got into real estate, I realized something very quickly. Nobody was going to build that structure for me. No one is going to tell me when to show up or hold me accountable if I didn't. That freedom is one of the things people love about real estate. It's also one of the things that kills most real estate agents' careers, because freedom without structure is not freedom. It's just chaos with a flexible schedule. So I sat down and built my own schedule. And I want to give you the specific math I used, because I think this is the part that most people never hear. I thought about this way. I was coming from a 60-hour-a-week salary job that someone else controlled. If I committed to 5 open houses a week, that's roughly 30 hours of activity. And in showings, follow-up, and client communication, another 10 hours. That's 40 hours a week. 40 hours a week that I controlled, that I designed, that worked around my life. Compare that to the 60 hours I was working before on someone else's terms. That reframe completely changed how I thought about building my schedule. I wasn't sacrificing my life for real estate. I was building a better version of the structure I already had, just one that I owned. And I protected that schedule the same way I would have protected a shift at my job. 5 open houses a week, every week, without exception. Not when I felt like it, not when nothing else came up, every single week. That consistency built into a real protected schedule is what kept my activity high during the months when results weren't showing up yet. The schedule didn't care how I felt. It just required me to show up, and showing up is what eventually produced results. The second thing I did that I believe kept me in the 13% was finding the right mentors and then actually doing what they said. And I want to emphasize on that second part, actually doing what they said, because that's where most agents fail. Even when they have access to great mentorships, they listen, they take notes, they say that's great advice, and then they go home and do whatever they're already doing. That's not mentorship, that's entertainment. Real mentorship only works when you actually follow the directions you're given. One of the people whose guidance I followed closely was Joshua Smith, a top producing agent and coach who had already built exactly the kind of career I wanted to build. And my philosophy with Joshua and with any mentor I've had was simple. This person was already done what I want to do at a high level. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, instead of thinking my way might be better, I'm just going to copy what they did. Exactly. Until I have results of my own that justify doing it differently. That mindset, being willing to follow before you lead, is something a lot of agents struggle with, especially agents who came with successful careers in other industries. They're used to being the expert in the room. They're used to making the calls. And then they get into real estate and their instincts is to figure it out themselves. When the fastest path is always finding someone who's already figured it out and do exactly what they did. Here's what I know about the agents who stay in the 13%. Almost all of them had someone, a mentor, a coach, a team leader, someone whose path they could follow. And the agents who try to figure everything out on their own, who are too proud or too independent to take direction, spent years learning lessons the hard way they could have learned in months just by listening. Find someone who has done what you want to do at a high level. Study them, reach out to them, learn from them. And then, this is the part most people skip, actually do what they tell you. Not your version of it, their version, until you have the results that justify your own version. The third reason I believe I stay in the 13%, and this is the one I feel most strongly about, is that I learned to attach to the process and detach from the outcome. Let me explain what I mean, because this changed everything for me. Most agents measure their success by results. Did the open house lead convert? Did the follow-up call turn into an appointment? Did the listing presentation result in a signed contract? And when the answer is no, repeatedly, in those early months, they start to feel like failures. Their motivation drops, their activity drops, and eventually they stop doing the things that would eventually produce results. That is the trap that catches the 87%. They let the outcome of their activity determine whether they keep doing the activity. And in real estate, where the results are always delayed, that is the recipe for quitting too soon. Here's the shift I made that changed how I experienced those early months. I stopped measuring my success by whether the open house converted, and I started measuring my success by whether I did the open house. I stopped measuring my success by whether the follow-up call led to an appointment, and I started measuring my success by whether I made the follow-up call. The outcome, whether any given activity converted into a deal, was outside my control. The process, whether I showed up, ran the open house, put out the signs, made the calls, that was entirely within my control. So that's what I measured. That's what I held myself accountable to. Did I do my 5 open houses this week? Yes, it's a win. Did I follow up with every lead from last week? Yes. That's a win. Did I post consistent content this week? Yes, that's a win. The scoreboard I kept was based entirely on process, not on whether any of those activities produced a deal on that specific day. And here's what that mindset did for me over time. It kept my activity consistent even when results weren't showing up, which meant the activity kept compounding week after week, month after month, until the momentum hit and suddenly all that process started converting into outcomes. The agents who attach to outcomes quit when the outcomes don't come fast enough. The agents who attach to the process keep going because they're winning every week based on what they can actually control. Detach from the outcome, attach to the process. That mindset shift alone could be the difference between being in the 87% and the 13%. The fourth reason, and in some ways the simplest, is that I showed up every single day. Not most days, not the days I felt motivated, every day. Consistency is the unsexy answer that nobody wants to hear because everyone is looking for a hack, a shortcut, a strategy that produces results faster. But after everything I've seen in this industry, after watching agents succeed and watching agents fail, I'm convinced that consistency is the single most important factor in determining who makes it and who doesn't. Not talent, not charisma, not connections, not even skill. Consistency. Because here's what consistency does that nothing else can replicate. It builds compound momentum. Every open house you sit adds context to your database. Every piece of content you post builds your brand one deposit at a time. Every follow-up call keeps a relationship warm that might convert 6 months from now. None of those individual actions are dramatic. None of them feel like they're changing your business in the moment. But compound over months, over years, they become the entire foundation of your career. The agents in the 87% are inconsistent. They have great weeks and then disappear. They prospect hard for a few months, then coast. They post 5 times in a row, then go silent for 3 weeks. And every time they disappear, the compound momentum they build starts to erode. The agents in the 13% just keep showing up. Not perfectly, not always with the best energy, but consistently enough that the momentum never stops building. That is the simplest and most honest answer I can give you about what separates the 13% from the 87%. They showed up every day until it worked. Let me bring this together. 87% of real estate agents fail within their first 5 years. Not because real estate is impossible, not because the market is too competitive, but because they've never built the structure, the mindset, and the habits that make this career sustainable. The 13% builds a real schedule and protects it. They don't wait to feel motivated. They build a structure that produces activity regardless of how they feel. The 13% find mentors and actually follow their directions. They're willing to copy someone who's already done what they want to do instead of trying to figure everything out alone. The 13% attach the process and detach from the outcome. They measure their success by what they can control, the activity, not by results that are always delayed. The 13% show up every single day without exception. Not perfectly, not always with great energy, but consistently enough that the momentum never stops building. None of these things are complicated, but all of them require a decision. A decision to treat this like a real business, follow direction, to trust the process, and to show up even on days when nothing seems to be working, knowing that the payoff is on the other side of the runway. The 13% isn't a club you're born into. It's a decision you make every single day. If you're watching this and you're determined to be in that 13%, I want to help you build a structure that makes that possible. Because everything I just talked about, the schedule, the mentorship, the process mindset, the consistency, all of it significantly is easier when you have the right people and the right environment around you. I do one-on-one Zoom calls with agents who are serious about building a career that lasts, not just surviving the first year, but building something they're still proud of 5 years from now. No pitch, no pressure. Just an honest conversation about where you are and what being a 13% actually looks like for your specific situation. The link to book directly on my calendar is in the description below. It takes about 30 seconds to book a time that works for you. And if this video gave you something to work with, subscribe to this channel. I post content every week for real estate agents who are serious about building a real estate career, not just hoping to end up on the right side of the statistic. I'm Scott Coomer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.